All right, I am here with the candidate for State Senate in the 24th District, Susan Chapman, and I want to talk to her a little bit about her campaign and get a feel about how things are going right now. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to talking with you. Hopefully my little menagerie, my cat just showed up here and my dog's behind me, so I'm
gonna hope. It won't be a problem if they bark or anything like that. It won't be a problem at all. So tell me a little bit about, before we get into the campaign or anything, just tell me a little bit about yourself for the readers.
Oh, sure. I've been in New Fairfield for almost 20 years. I have 3 children. I got my start in politics back I started out on the Planning Commission in New Fairfield. I was on there for 4 years, and I was chairman for 2 years. Then I was asked to run for the Board of Selectmen, so I ran for the Board of Selectmen, and I was on the Board of Selectmen for 8 years. I was first selectman for 4.5 years. Next, I have 3 children. My oldest is he's going to be an Air Force doctor. He's in medical school right now down in Long Island, so he's going to be graduating by May of next year. My younger son, Ryan, he went to West Point, and he's a captain in the Army down at Fort Bragg right now. And my daughter, she graduated from art school, and now she is trying to get into veterinary school, so she wants to be a vet.
You said you were the former first select person. That gives you a lot of political experience, and as a first select person, you of New Fairfield, how would you use your experience as a first select person to get things done as a state senator?
Well, I think one of the things that is missing in Hartford is people with municipal experience, having been the first selectman and seeing these things that come out of Hartford that may sound good up in Hartford, but are really hard to implement at a local level, or they're unfunded mandates. So then you have to find ways in your budget to fulfill these mandates that come down from Hartford. So I think my experience out being a municipal leader is I understand that we need the impacts on our local municipalities with the actions that we take in Hartford.
Can you give me like one example of something where, again, let's say you had an issue what's an issue that's happening in New Fairfield right now that could use some assistance from the state, and how would you handle that as a state senator?
Well, one of the things that came about while I was first selected was the stormwater management plan, this MS4, which is a very, very expensive proposition for the town of New Fairfield, and it's an unfunded mandate from the state for managing stormwater runoff. And while it's laudable that we want to have clean drinking water and clean water going into the lake, they had only 25% of the towns that were under the old permit were actually compliant with the rules, and New Fairfield was. Instead of making towns that weren't compliant become compliant, they made it more difficult for all towns. And so we were compliant, and now we have a greater burden. So it's not fair when other towns are getting a pass on not being compliant, and increasing our budgets because of that.
One of the things I love to talk about is the diversity of these districts, especially the 24th, because you have towns such as Sherman and New Fairfield, but you also have other communities such as Danbury and Bessel. Right. Something that people might like in Bessel, people in Sherman might not like.
Right.
How are you gonna, if you were elected a state senator and you have bills that, let's say, Sherman might like but Bessel doesn't like, how do you weigh that into your decision making?
Well, in my time as first selectman, whenever we were making big decisions, I made sure I got input from everybody who was going to be affected. I mean, obviously, you're not going to, every decision is not going to make everybody happy, but if you do your homework and talk to people and find out. I mean, obviously, as you know, Danbury is way more diverse than Sherman or New Fairfield, and there's going to be competing interests, and you're just going to have to balance make the best decision possible for everybody. And so every decision is not going to be perfect, but as long as you're making it based on fact and getting input from everyone, I think people appreciate that and can understand that, because it's just everyday life. You have to make decisions that doesn't make everybody happy, but you try to do the best you can for everyone.
I did a little research. I went through your website. I went through your Facebook page, your entries, and you've been fairly critical of the governor's handling of the pandemic. What are your concerns in regards to the government's response to the situation? How would you handle things differently?
Well, I don't think by and large, my biggest complaint with the governor is we're not getting our businesses a sound plan as to how to move forward. You know, I talk to struggling business owners all the time, and they just don't, you know, that one day, like my hairdresser, they were going to be opening up in May, and then all of a sudden they're not opening up. So businesses can't, they want to be compliant, they want to do what's best for everyone, but we have to give them a sound plan for how we're going to move forward so they can figure out how to move forward. I mean, this is, you know, we're seeing a lot of businesses close, and I think we need to have some better direction as to how we're going to open back up the economy, getting people back to work, and so we stop losing businesses and people stop losing jobs. That's my biggest, that's my biggest complaint. My biggest hope is that we could get a better plan together for getting our economy back up and running.
To follow up with that, you know, Danbury the Danbury school system just had a situation where they were going to go with opening the schools, and at the last minute we decided to stay with the remote learning because Danbury's in a red zone.
Right.
Do you are you in support of remote learning? What are your thoughts on that, and would you want to open the schools?
Well, I think there's a couple of things going on here. Obviously, keeping everyone safe is the priority. I think what they need to do is just come up with a consistent plan. If we're just going to just do remote learning, let's just say we're doing remote learning from now until the end of the year or something. Just it's so hard for parents, especially when they have small children, trying to have people with families with two people working and managing how to take care of their kids. You know, everyone was planning on going back to school on Monday, and they found out late Friday that the schools weren't going to open. So parents are, scrambling last minute to figure out what they're going to do with their kids and how to go back to their jobs. And so I think we just need to figure out something that is consistent and keeps everybody safe, and that parents and families can plan their lives.
There are several people out there who feel that the guidelines the guidelines are a little too harsh. I mean, are you in support of wearing a mask and social distancing and the protocols that are in place to try to manage the situation, or do you feel that maybe the social distancing is not right, or maybe we should have choice when it comes to wearing a mask?
Well, I'm not opposed to wearing the mask. I'm not opposed to the social distancing. And before the pandemic ever hit, I was pretty much a germaphobe already. So washing your hands and keeping things clean is something I support all the time, not just during a pandemic. But we need to keep people safe, and obviously we need to take measures to make sure that the most vulnerable in our society are most protected and have what they need. Because we all know the elderly population and people with comorbidities are most at risk, and we just need to make sure we're doing everything we can to protect them.
Here, let's go to another topic here that you have on your website that I see a lot, and it's about the charter school. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on, I know your thoughts, but can you just tell my readers, what are your thoughts on the charter school, and why do you support it?
Well, the charter school, first of all, has been approved by the state. It's the legislators in Danbury who have blocked the funding from the state. We have a generous donor who's willing to give the city of Danbury $25 million to get this school up and running. And we all know that Danbury school population is growing and has a need for more schools. But also the charter school, the way it's set up is to help our minority population in Danbury. I was at the education rally. Were you at the education rally down in Danbury? It was wonderful. And to hear these kids on stage saying how much it would mean to them to be in a school with people that reflect them in leadership and role models, it was very touching. And I supported the concept even before I went. But when you go and listen to these kids and see how much a school like this would mean to them, I think to me, there's no reason not to support it. It's a great concept, and we want to do everything we can to make sure all of our kids are successful in school. In different schools, kids learn differently, and different school models benefit different kids. And I think the charter school is obviously an asset to Danbury, and I've always supported charter.
Okay. Now you also talked about, I'm reading right here, you talked about, you're saying, and I'll quote, "I will go to Hartford to get our fair share of funding for our communities." Right. School funding, I've always heard all the time in this area, that municipalities feel that they're not getting enough for their fair share back from Hartford. What would you do up there in Hartford to make sure that the 24th district does get its fair share?
Well, first of all, we need to have people who advocate for us getting our full share of school funding. Danbury's being shorted almost $20 million every year. So that shortfall falls on the taxpayers. I mean, we already are taxpayers sending money to Hartford, now basically paying twice because they're not sending back the tax dollars to our communities to support our schools. So the first thing would be to make sure that Danbury, Bethel, all of our schools are getting their fair share of educational funding.
Some people would say that, or they're arguing that the charter school would take away money that can go towards public schools. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's just not true. I mean, the state will be funding the school, and it's not taking. It is in addition to our Danbury schools. It's not taking away from. And by the time the school is done, it's going to alleviate over 700 kids from other schools that help alleviate overcrowding. So it is an asset to our schools and definitely something that will benefit our community.
The next topic, I'm looking on your website here, it says improved transportation system. And you bring up the infamous Route 37 construction project.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? I'm sure you have a lot to say on that situation.
Well, having lived through that Route 37 debacle of a construction project, I mean, it was just completely mismanaged. In my personal opinion, I'm not really sure that that project was necessary. I think there's a lot of money being spent on that project that probably would have been better spent on expanding 84 or other places that really need it. It was mismanaged, and we needed people in Hartford who can manage projects better and make sure our money's being managed properly, because we have, well, thankfully it's wrapping up now, so we're not going to have to go through another winter of that construction. So, but I think we just need to have more thoughtfulness in what kind of projects we bring forward to help. You know, obviously we have traffic issues all over the place, and I don't know that that money spent on Route 37 it's going to make that much of a difference, where there's definitely other places that could have probably benefited much more.
Now, you talked about widening 84. You know, people who support tolls say that, you know, we need to have tolls in order to get these things done. What are your thoughts on that? And how would you propose constructions on 84 without having too much of a burden on the taxpayers, or not even implementing tolls?
Well, I absolutely don't support tolls, and I don't think tolls are the way to go to support our infrastructure. I think our legislature has shown our legislature has shown that they can't be trusted with our money. And even though they say the special transportation fund, the money is locked up, or they haven't rated it, but it's semantics. If you don't put the money in the fund, you can't say you rated it. But if you didn't put the money in there, you haven't been a good fiduciary of the money that has been sent to Hartford for special transportation. So first of all, we need to make sure the money is going into the account, stays in the account, and is used for infrastructure. The state of Connecticut has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. And we need to make sure that the money that's being set aside for these projects are actually going to where they need to go.
Another thing I see on your website is in fact, I see a lot of candidates, Republican candidates, are talking about this, is the police accountability bill.
Right.
You know, what are your objections, specifically your objections with the bill? Do you think the bill was even needed?
I don't think that this bill was needed. I think if you really wanted to have a true police accountability bill, it should have been done in a regular legislative session where all the players could come to the table and you could get input from everyone. This, as we all know, this bill was rushed together, passed in the middle of the night, with very little input from, they had a listening session, not even public hearings. And the proper way to do a bill is do it during the full legislative session, where you can have public hearings and people can come and give their input and speak to the bill, and we actually put together a good bill. I don't think it's acceptable as a legislator to say, well, we know there's some bad stuff in this bill, but we'll fix it later. That's not acceptable. It should be a good bill from the start, and not something that you hastily put together and say, well, we'll fix it later.
So to be clear, you're against the bill, but you're not against the concept?
Yes, I think they're asking for our police officers to have more training. These are not things that they're opposed to, but I think they're just things that are really harmful in this bill that keep police officers from being able to do their job properly, that taking away the qualified immunity. I mean, as the first selectman, I was technically the administrative chief of police in New Fairfield. I worked with our police officers. I've hired police officers. we have some of the best police officers in the country, and I think we did them a disservice by not giving them the opportunity to have a lot more input into what we were putting forward.
So I know I wanted to talk about the food pantry, so I really want to talk about that because
That's,
on your Facebook page, there's a lot of entries about your volunteering for the food pantry. So I know it must be near and dear to your heart. So why don't you tell me a little bit about why you're doing it, and why do you feel that this is a serious concern for the state?
sure. So I started the church that I go to. It's actually in my district in Bethel. This happens to be Walnut Hill Community Church. They were doing weekly food pantries during the pandemic, and I started volunteering. Even before I was going to run for office, I started volunteering there. And there is so much need when you see people coming. Our food pantry starts at 5:30, and you see people on food pantry days coming at 1:30 in the afternoon, sitting and waiting to get food. And they're coming with their small children. It's hot. It's raining, and your heart can't help go out to them because they are truly in need. If you're coming and sitting in a hot car for 4 hours waiting for food, so there's definitely a big need for this, and it's not going to get. We're getting into the holiday season, and there's no end in sight right now to the pandemic. So serving these people is really, really paramount. And as you probably saw, I was able to get a food truck for our food pantries, which I'm very excited about because we had a food truck that was going and rescuing food from the different grocery stores, but in June it was abruptly taken away from us. So everybody's saying, we really, really need to get this refrigerated truck so we can safely rescue food from the local grocery stores who are so generous in supporting our food pantries. And I was able to secure a $50,000 donation from a generous donor. And as I'm sure you saw yesterday, it was on the road for the first time, which is so exciting. And we had they picked up from 5 different stores in the area, and they did their first delivery yesterday at Victory Christian Center in Danbury. And I got there 11:30 yesterday morning when the truck was there dropping off the food. And there were already people sitting in line waiting for the food pantry that doesn't even start until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And this one started a couple of years ago, just serving about 30 people, and now they are serving over 175 people. So in the course of 2 years, you can see the tremendous need that has come. So we're working on trying to get a regional food pantry, like a centralized location where we can do, now we have the food truck, we can do big food drives at local grocery stores, and then we can bring that food back to a centralized location where different pantries can come and pick up food to take back. Because Walnut Hill serves about between 400 and 500 people every time we have our pantry. But Jericho, Daily Bread, Victory Church, they all have, their sizes are different than ours. So and we've been really helping them to like I think I told you today, we got a shipment coming in from the USDA food boxes. And what we do is we bring them to the church because we have the guy with the forklift, we take it off, and then we push that food out to the other local food pantries. And then obviously, tomorrow night is our food pantry at Walnut Hill, and those boxes will be given out to the people who come tomorrow night as well.
You've been on the campaign trail, you've been walking around, talking to residents. What's the feedback you've been receiving?
We've been getting really good feedback. I think people are really want somebody in Hartford who's really going to listen to them and understand their needs, and not just somebody who just shows up for photo ops. Like, I'm hands-on in the community. I see the people in need, and I really want to go to Hartford and help the people in our community who are most in need. Because I was telling somebody, I was at Seatown the other day, and I was watching. There were lines of people lined up to return their recyclables. I mean, that's just, there's so much need in Danbury in this area that I really have a heart for wanting to help our people in need, because they need it and they deserve it.
How are you able to campaign in the midst of this pandemic? What are the challenges that you had to deal with?
Well, it's definitely, as you know, I've been in office before, so I've campaigned before. So this is totally different for everybody, and we're doing the best we can. Obviously, social media has been a big driver for us to get our word out. I've been to some events, and that you have to just be creative and finding ways to reach out to voters and just try to connect more, because obviously I've done some knocking on doors, and people they're nice, but you can tell they're a little nervous about having somebody come to their door, which is understandable. Yeah. So we just have to, everybody's campaigning a little bit differently this time, and it'll be interesting to see the outcomes from having this new version of campaigning this time. hopefully next time around, we'll be back to normal and be able to get out and really interact with our residents and have events. And because, you know, when I ran for Secretary of State, I was 2-3 events every day. And this time, you know, you're digging around like, where can we go? What can we do? So we can get the word out. So it's been different. Everybody's in the same boat.
Okay, well, look, thanks a lot for all your time. I know we going back and forth trying to schedule this thing, and I'm happy we were finally able to do this right now. One more week to go. Hang in there. Just 7 more days, and it'll all be over.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks a lot for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get the word out about my campaign.
All right. Oh, actually, one more while we're saying that, if people want to find more information about you, where you stand on your issues, how can they get in contact with you? Website, Facebook, Twitter, something like that.
Yep, I have a Facebook page, Susan Chapman for State Senate. I have a web page, it's Chapman for State Senate. I have Instagram and I have Twitter, so I have it all.
All right. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. She has everything. So go out if you want more information and find out where she stands on other issues. Find her on social media, and she is available. 1 more week to go. Hang in there. And again, thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it.